How's it going, guys? Hey, we continue in our summer devotional series here in the Epistle of Jude. We're going to be in Jude, verse 5 today. Just want to encourage you to reread the first 4 verses of the letter, though. Jude holds this conviction that, he wanted to write to them about their common salvation, but instead he wants them to contend for the faith and to stand against false teaching. So today we get to Jude 5, and it says this: "Now I desire to remind you, though you know all things once for all." Maybe you could read it like this: "Now I desire to remind you, though you already know these things." If what Jude is about to say doesn't trigger our minds with an allusion to Scripture, it shows that we have more work to do in order to understand some of the basic stories that are found in the Scripture. Look at what he's about to say. I want to remind you that the Lord, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. So the first thing that he wants to do is he wants to use the Scripture to remind our hearts. I think it's Charles Spurgeon who said, as it pertains to, the rudimentary facts, as it pertains to the essential doctrines, as it pertains to the things that we think we know every day, we need to continue to insist on those truths, to insist on the simple truths of the Christian faith for this reason. The moment that we begin to say, oh, everybody knows those stories and everybody knows those principles and everybody knows those truths, that's the exact moment where we fall into the danger of actually forgetting them. And then John Calvin even argued something very similar. He says the Scripture is not just there to teach you what you don't know, but the Scripture is also there to stir you up concerning things that you do already know, so that you don't become cold to those things that you already know. So Jude, of course, the half-brother of Jesus, is very much like Peter as well. Peter says, I want to tell you these things to stir you up by way of reminder. And Paul says, I want to remind you of these things. There's much about the Scripture that calls us to be reminded of the things we supposedly already know, but that we can't allow our hearts to grow cold in. So Jude says, I desire to remind you, though you already know of these things, I desire to remind you that the Lord, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, do you remember all that God did to rescue the people of Israel out of Egypt? God met them with miracles in Egypt. God met them with a miracle at the Red Sea. God met them with a miracle at Mount Sinai. God met them with miracles in the wilderness. Then, of course, that first generation, they came just to the brim or the edge of entering the promised land. They came up to Kadesh Barnea, and how did they respond? Despite seeing all that the Lord had done, they now decided to answer the Lord with unbelief. That's sad. It shows us that regardless of how much God has done in your life, it's possible that you can still respond with subsequent unbelief. With all that being said, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently God destroyed those who did not believe. I think the Scripture is here to remind us of where God has brought us from, but the Scripture is also there to prod us and to encourage us of where we are to conclude or where we are to finish our race. Paul mentioned the Christian walk as if it was a race, the good fight that he had fought, the race that he had finished, of which Jesus was at the finish line waiting for him, ready to give him, a crown, a reward to him alone. I think what's at the end of our Christian walk is the proof of endurance. We need to continue to respond every single day in faith, not to respond in unbelief, but to respond with belief, with faith in what the Lord is currently doing right here, right now. That's the encouragement for today from Jude 5. God bless you all. Take care.